Have you ever made a mistake or created sloppy commits when checking in changes to a Git repository? Yeah, we all have. After watching this video, you'll know exactly how to fix those problems and create a clean commit history with Git Rebase and Magit. Stick around to learn more. So the content on this channel is supported by the System Crafters community, people like you. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button below and check out the links in the description to see other ways that you can support my work. So to get started, make sure that you've got Magit installed first. And you can check out the link below in the description for the first video in the Mastering Git with Magit series for more information about how to get set up with Magit. We're going to be using the Magit status interface a lot in this video, so make sure that you are familiar with it first before we get into it, because we'll be seeing it a few times here. I've also prepared an example repository that you can use to try the techniques that I'll show you in this video. Check out the link below in the description to find it. The repo is called Filet Magit. You'll see why in a moment. But this is basically just a test repository or an example repository that has the exact set of commits that we're going to be working on in this video. So if you want to follow along, clone this repository and open it up in Magit, and you'll be able to do the same things that I'm doing. So let's imagine that we're writing a cookbook package for Emacs. Yeah, another one of those cookbook things. We've been working on a feature for adding new cookbook entries, and we're just about ready to push those changes to the public repository. But before we do that, let's take a look at our commit history and see if there's any cleanup work that we need to do on our commits. So from a file within the project folder, like the one that you see here, we can use the Magit status command, either through metax Magit status, or you can use the Control-X-G binding if it's already set up for you. So I'm just going to use Control-X-G, and we're going to get the Magit status buffer here. I'll use Control-X1 to make this full screen so we can see it a little bit better. Also, I want to point out that we have the key bindings here in the mode line if you want to see which keys I'm pressing. So in this commit history, we have a few commits here, and we can see that there are some initial commits, and keep in mind that these are in reverse chronological order, so the newest commit is at the top and the oldest commit is at the bottom. So we have the initial commits of the package code. We have a command to create recipe entries. I think that's supposed to be entries and not entrees, which is misspelled, so we need to fix that. Also, we have a couple commits here that mention adding documentation. We might be able to merge those together. And then we have a function to adding a function to make a cookbook entry. It may make sense to move this before the command to create the recipe entries because we're adding some helper functionality. So we'll see how we might be able to do that. Also, there's a temporary commit for some debugging messages. Maybe we want to get rid of that. And then there's an oops commit, which is, and I have another kind of oops right now. I don't know why it's selecting this, but the oops commit here needs to be rolled into some other commit. It was basically just to fix up some problem that we had. So we've got some changes that we need to do, and we can check out how to do that in just a second. So we're going to clean up these commits using a feature of Git called Interactive Rebase. Now, this is a very powerful tool that allows you to edit the commit history in a number of ways. So it's really important to know how to use it if you work with Git a lot. And as usual, Magit makes it much easier and more efficient to perform these same rebase operations than it would be on the command line. So we're going to see again how this interface is superior to just doing things on the command line. And one little note, if you have changes to track files in your repo before you start doing a rebase, make sure to stash them. Just check out the links here in the show notes, and you'll get more information on how to do that. Okay, one important tip. So here's something that I recommend doing before any rebase operation if you're not that familiar with doing rebase yet. And that is to back up your branch before you start doing the rebase, just to make sure that you're not going to lose access to the original commits. So in the Magit status buffer, you can press BN to create a new branch. So what we're going to do is pull up the Magit status buffer with Control-X-G, and then I'm going to press B, and that's going to bring up the branch panel. And there's two sections here. One is checkout, the other is create. So we only want to create a new branch. We don't want to check out the branch. We're just going to create the backup branch. So we're going to press N here to create a new branch. And the branch that we're currently in is called Add Recipes. So I'm going to create a branch called, we're going to select the Add Recipes branch first because this is the starting point of the branch. And we're going to name the new branch Add Recipes Backup. And this is going to create a new branch that looks exactly like this branch, starting from the same commit. And we're just creating that on the side just in case we need to go back to it if we make any kind of mistakes while we're doing our rebase operation. So now that we have that backup branch, we can always get back to the original state. So this is something you're gonna wanna do pretty often whenever you're doing rebases the first time, because if you start editing the history of your commits, you might lose access to the previous history in case you make a mistake. So definitely do this if you are just trying this out for the first time, and maybe for a little while until you get really comfortable with doing this operation. So rewording commits. You can reword any commit in your branch's history by performing an interactive rebase using Magit, like we've been seeing before. So in the Magit status buffer, if you put your cursor on the commit that you want to reword, you can press RI. That's lowercase RI. We're going to see a lot of these R commands. So whenever I say RI, R something, it's just lowercase r, lowercase I, etc. Inside of the Magit status buffer. So I'm going to switch back over to that. And since we know that we need to fix this add command to create recipe entries, I'm going to press R, and then you'll see that it brings up the rebase panel. Then I'm going to press I to rebase interactively. You can see here in the bottom left-hand corner. So I'll press I now, and it's going to bring up the rebase view basically. And this looks kind of like a commit editor, but it's actually a little bit different because what we're doing is getting a listing of all the commits at the point of the commit that we selected and everything after that. So whenever you make any kind of changes here, it actually changes all the commits after the one that you change, because you're basically rewriting the entire history from the starting point of this rebase operation. Very important thing to keep in mind. So you can see down below here, we have a few lines. They all start with the word pick. So pick means keep this commit, don't do any changes to it. But there, down below, there are a few other operations you can do, like reword, which is the one we're going to use now. And there are these individual letters that you can press on each line to signify one of these things. And this is the way that Magit makes this a lot more efficient, because you can just jump to each of these lines, put your cursor on a line, and press one of these letters to say which rebase action you want to take for this particular commit. So, like any other buffer in Emacs, you can use Control N and P to move up and down. And I'm going to put the cursor on that first line for add command to create recipe entrees, I guess you could call it. I'm going to press R to reword it, and now we've marked that as a commit that needs to be reworded. We're not going to change any of the rest of the commits yet, because we're going to show you how to do other operations later to change these. So for now, we're just going to do the reword on that first commit. I'm going to press Control C to confirm that I want to do this rebase operation. And like many other views in Emacs, if you press Control C, Control K, it will cancel. But for now, we're going to press Control C. And what it's going to do is give me an editor for this particular commit to edit the commit message. So I'm going to go fix this and say this is now recipe entries. Then I'll press Control C to confirm. And now we can see that our history has been updated. And now this commit that we have here, add command to create recipe entries, is the wording is fixed. So we fixed that commit, which is great. So next, we want to just sort of point out one more time that we have changed the whole commit history now. So let me show you this. So right now, if you look at the latest commit, add documentation string, the commit hash is 0D444E2. If we press BB and switch to add recipes backup branch, we'll see that the top commit is 82FC858, which is a different commit hash, which means since we changed one commit in the history, all the future commits are now different. They have different commit hashes, so they're not the same anymore. I'm going to jump back to the add recipes branch using BB. So now, if you've ever pushed this branch to the remote repository, now if you try to push again, it's going to give you an error, because these two branches don't match up anymore because their histories have changed. So you're going to have to do a force push whenever you do a new push to the repository. Just keep that in mind. I covered it in the previous video in this series. I think I have links to it somewhere in this video or down below in the description. So go check out the second video in the Magit series to see more about how to do force push correctly. But just keep in mind that your commit history is going to be different, and this is the point where we start to lose the old history. So that's why we created that backup branch, just to be safe. All right, reordering commits. So now the commit history you create can be seen as the story of the code's creation. So sometimes it makes sense for a more recent change to be moved back before the earlier changes to improve the narrative. So whenever you're making commits in your repository, you're basically adding changes on top of changes, and you're describing each of those changes. But if one of your changes makes sense to become first, because maybe there's some core behavior you're adding or core functionality you're adding, and you want to make that earlier in the history of your code, you can use reordering to do that. So you can really easily reorder commits in the interactive rebase view by placing the cursor on a particular commit and using the following key bindings, which is pretty familiar to you if you're using normal Emacs bindings or evil mode bindings. It's the meta N, meta P, or meta J, and meta K. So if we jump over to this view, what we're going to do is move around some of these commits to put them in a better place. So I'm going to jump down to this initial commit of package code. I'm going to press RI to start an interactive rebase. And then I'm going to jump down to this oops commit. Now this commit actually needs to be moved up to the initial commit of package code. It needs to go to become part of that. So we're going to show how to do the merging in a moment, but we're going to reorder it first. So I'm going to go move this commit by using Alt P to move the line up. And you can see right here, meta P, meta N, move the commit at point up or down. So if you forget those bindings, they're just right here written down for you. If you're using evil mode bindings or the evil collection, you want to use Alt J and K to move those up and down. So now I'm going to move down to the documentation string commit. I'm going to move that up next to the other documentation commit because we want to merge those later also. And I think that's all we want to do for now. So if I press Control C to confirm this, now the ordering of all these commits is different. We've basically changed the order of the commits. And once again, the commit hash for that very first commit is different, or even the ordering is different for all of those. So like we said, we're rewriting the entire history after the commit that we start at every time we do these rebase operations. So we're creating new commits entirely. All right, and as you can see, we reordered multiple commits in one interactive rebase operation. So you can move those commits around in any order you want, but the only problem comes is if there's some kind of conflict between those two commits. So now let's talk about how to deal with that. So we're gonna move another commit. We're gonna move a commit that should be coming before some of the initial package changes that we added. And it's going to create a conflict in the commit history. So what we're going to do is move that commit, and then we're going to deal with the conflict and show you how to resolve that. So what we're going to do is go down to right on this line and press RI to start an interactive rebase. And I'm going to move this add function to create a cookbook entry. If I go down right here, I'm going to use Alt P to move this up above the very first commit, because what we're doing is we're creating a function that makes it easy to create new cookbook entries, and we're going to add that before the command that actually handles the creation of the entries. So one is to create the data structure, and the other is for the user to then create a new cookbook entry. So I've moved the commit first. I'm going to press Control C, and now it's going to give me an error. It's going to say that there is a conflict here, and it's going to give me the diff of the file, the Magit.el file that we have here, and I have to go and fix this. So I'm going to go down to this section. I'm going to jump into the file so I can edit it. And what's happened here is that I started off the code with a interactive function called filet new recipe, but now I've changed it to be a non-interactive function that just returns a data structure. So what I want to do is save that new code, because that's the code that I want to move first in the history. So I'm going to go here and just delete this part of the code and delete the merge marker, just to make sure that this code looks clean and it's what I want it to be in the history at this point. And then here, it pulls in this filet add recipe code, but this actually isn't supposed to exist yet because it comes in the following commit. So what I'm going to do is just delete this code right here. And now we're left with the new recipe code and the filet show recipe functions. And I'm going to save this file, and then I'm going to use Control-XG to jump back to the status. And then now we have our stage changes. So once you deal with a conflict, these changes will automatically be staged, and you can continue the rebase operation. So I'm going to press R here. And to continue a rebase, do not commit these changes yourself. Don't try to use CC to commit these changes. You need to use something different for this. Press the R key to pull up the rebase panel. And when you are actively in a rebase, which you can tell by this line up here that says rebasing add recipes, blah, blah, blah. When you're in the middle of a rebase, if you press R, it will give you commands that you can use to either continue with the rebase operation or abort it or skip some change or anything like that. We're gonna press R to continue here. But if you get into a state where your rebase is not going well and you just want to abort and get out of there, just press A, and that will get you out of the rebase operation and put you back where you were before. So in this case, we're happy with the changes. We're going to press R to continue. And the next thing it's going to do is ask me to edit the commit message. And it's kind of, it can be seen to be annoying that you have to do this again and confirm it again. But if you make some kind of rebasing change like this, sometimes it's good to edit your commit message in case things need to be clarified a little bit. In this case, we're not going to change this message at all. We're just going to press Control C to finish that. Now we see there's another conflict, and actually something we changed here for some reason is being deleted in the next commit. We're just going to go and put that code back in because it does belong there. So I'm going to edit this code. I'm going to leave in this filet new recipe code. And now we can see that that filet add recipe command that got deleted in the previous commit now has reappeared because the next commit was the one that actually added that code. So what we're going to do now is save this file, use Control-X-G, and then we're going to press, let's see, RR, because the changes for the merge have already been staged. We're going to press RR to continue the rebase. We're going to be asked one more time to confirm the commit message. Press Control-C, and then the edits are complete. So I think that was everything for this slide. So editing a commit. So if you want to edit the changes that are in a particular commit, you can do that very easily with interactive rebase also. So we're going to need to make a tweak to the commit that we just fixed to restore the use of the filet new recipe function inside of the filet add recipe command, since we had to remove that before when we were resolving the previous commits. So what we're going to do is start a new interactive rebase right at, let's see, at this line, I think, and we're going to press RI to start that interactive rebase. And on that first line, I'm going to press E to edit that commit. And all this is going to do when we press Control-C, is drop us at that point in time after that commit has already been made. And we can go and check the filet Magit function, or code, basically, and delete this code. We can basically just change the code to whatever we want. So I'm just going to change this code to call filet new recipe, name, ingredients, instructions. And then I'm going to save the code. I'm going to jump back into Magit status. And now I'm going to stage these changes. So now that we have made these changes, we do need to stage them. And then we can press R to continue. I think I just pressed the wrong button, RR. And that's going to allow us to edit the commit message for this commit that we're changing. So now we are changing this, this commit here. So I will press Control-C. And now we are back to the state that we were in before, but we have edited that commit to call the correct function. So it's very easy to edit a commit in your history by using the edit command inside of the interactive rebase. All right, so combining commits. This is very common for me. I use this all the time. We're gonna see how we can combine two commits together. And there's two ways to do this. One is a command called fixup, and the other is called squash. Fixup merges only the changes of a commit into the previous commit. So you're basically taking two commits that are next to each other, one that's older, one that's newer. And whenever you say you want the newer commit to be a fixup commit, it will just have its changes merged into the previous commit, and it won't save the commit message of that second commit. When you use squash, it actually does save that message of the second commit. It merges the changes together for those two commits, and then it gives you the opportunity to edit both of the commit messages together so that you can merge those messages together in case you need to combine the description of that commit in some way. It can be very helpful for improving the commit messages in your history. So the rule of thumb here is to use fixup when you do not care about the commit message of the merged commit, and use squash when you want to keep it and maybe update it somehow. So we're going to use fixup to combine that oops commit into the initial package code commit, and then the squash command to combine the two documentation commits into a single commit and then merge their commit messages together. So I'm going to go down to this initial commit of package code here because we want to do this fixup on oops. So we need to actually rebase the previous commit as well. I'm going to press RI. And then on this line for the oops commit, I'm going to press F for fixup. And then on the second documentation commit, since I want to squash it into the one before it, I'm going to press S for squash. So now we have two commits that we're going to do squash and fixup operations on within the same rebase operation. I'll press Control-C, And we're going to be asked to reword that second squash that we did, but not the first one, because the first one was just a fix-up. We don't care about that message. But now we have to edit the commit message for this one that we're adding here. So what we're going to do is just change up this message a little bit, add documentation strings for commands. And then here, I'm just going to add the information about which commands we're adding documentation strings for, like that. I can press Control C, and now we have those two commits that we didn't really want anymore. We've collapsed them into the commits before, and the commit history is starting to look a lot cleaner, which is great. And then deleting commits. So sometimes whenever you're working on some code, you'll probably make some temporary commits that are only useful for debugging purposes, or maybe diagnosing a test failure in your continuous integration tests, like on GitHub Actions or something. And you don't really want to keep these. You don't really want to push those into the code that you put into the main branch after you're finished. So before you merge, you probably will want to delete those commits. And thankfully, Interactive Rebase makes this really easy. So if we start a new Interactive Rebase, we can start, I would say, right before, and the commit before the one that you want to delete. So we're going to delete this temp commit. I'm going to start on the one before. I'm going to press RI for Interactive Rebase, and then I'll jump down to the next commit and press D for drop. And I think in this case, for some reason, drop is not bound. I think it gets bound inside of evil mode. Interesting. Well, is it control? Oh, is it X or K? Hold on. K. Okay, it's K in this case. So if you use evil collection, it's going to be X, I believe, or D. And if you use normal Emacs bindings, it's going to be K. And we can see that where? Well, it's in here somewhere. So anyway, we are going to drop this commit, and basically you can see there's a line struck through this to say this commit is going to be deleted. So if we press Control C, we can see now that that temp commit is gone. So now we're at a point where our commit history is exactly how we want it to be, and everything looks way cleaner than it did before. We've moved around a lot of commits, we've merged some commits together, we've gotten rid of the commits we don't want anymore. So now we're ready to push our changes. So now that we've done the whole flow in individual steps, let's actually clean up the same commits all in one Interactive Rebase operation, just so we can show you how quick it can be whenever you know how to do this and you want to clean up your commits all at once. And here's the point where the backup branch we created becomes useful, only because we want to restore that old history that we had before. So inside the Magit status screen, we can press the capital X character to open the reset panel. Now, if you use evil collection, you'll need to press O, capital O instead, but we're gonna press X here. I'm gonna press capital X, and then I'm gonna press H for hard. This is a hard reset, and this is slightly dangerous because if you have any changes to tracked files in your repository, in your tree here, and you do a hard reset, it's gonna delete those changes. So make sure that you don't have any unfinished changes in your repository. You may wanna stash those changes first. So what we're gonna do is reset this branch to the state of the backup branch that we created before. And this is an example of how you can pull those changes back if you do run into trouble and you wanna start over. So we're gonna select Add Recipes Backup as the place to reset from. And as soon as I do that, now we're back to that old set of changes that we had before that we had fixed up. But now we're gonna do it all in one shot. So now what we're gonna do is go down to the first commit. I'm going to press RI here. Then we'll do our reordering that we did before. I'll reorder the documentation commit and the oops commit. I'm going to press K on the temp commit to delete that. I'm going to move the function to create a cookbook entry above the command to create recipe entries. And then I'm going to put a fix up on the oops commit. I'm going to put a squash on the documentation commit. And I don't need to do any edit on the command to create recipe entries commit because that's going to show up as part of the merge anyway. But you could press E here, but it just won't do anything in this case, I think. So I'm going to press Control C. Now it's going to ask me to fix this, this merge issue. Let me just quickly fix that again. I'm going to delete this code. I'll save it, jump back to the status buffer, RR, Control C to confirm that. Now I'm going to go deal with the next issue that we ran into. I'll go add this code, excuse me, add this code back like it was before. And then at the same time, I can just go in here and make that same change that I needed to make the last time, where we add the call to filet new recipe, name, ingredients, instructions. Make sure that we close the parentheses. And then I'm going to jump back to the status buffer and press RR to continue. And then we could fix the reword here as well. So fix the entries here, Control C, Control C. Now we're at the place where we need to merge these two commits together. So I'm going to say commands. Then here I'm going to drop this in. And then delete this line, Control C, Control C. And now our history is cleaned up exactly the same way that we did with all the other previous operations, but we did it in one single interactive rebase operation, which is great. All right, so that's it. So let me know in the comments if this video was helpful or if you have any questions, and don't forget to click the like button below. Until next time, thanks a lot for watching and happy hacking. We'll see ya.